All right, so before I round up my own section of the course, I want us to briefly look at auxiliary projection or auxiliary views. An auxiliary view is one that is drawn on a plane other than a principal plane of projection to show that the true shape and size of an object. Okay, and we have two types of auxiliary views. You have first auxiliary view and the second auxiliary view. So an auxiliary view projected from an orthographic elevation will give a first auxiliary plan. Okay, while if you project an auxiliary view from an orthographic plan, you give a first auxiliary elevation. Okay, so if you project from an orthographic elevation, you will get the first auxiliary plan, and then if you project from from an orthographic plan, you get the first auxiliary elevation. I will explain that briefly. Now this is a very simple example of what the auxiliary view looks like. So you have an auxiliary plane is a plane other than your usual isometrics and all of those physical planes, 2D planes. And so what you've done is that you have an angle where you have a true description of the object as you think it should be. Now a second auxiliary elevation can be projected from a first auxiliary plan, while a second auxiliary plan can be projected from a first auxiliary elevation. Okay, so let's see what are the uses of auxiliary views: to find the true length of a line, to find the point of view of a line, to find the edge of a plane, to find the true shape of a plane, to find the piercing point, to find the angle between two intersecting planes, and to find the common perpendicular between two skewed lines. So if you have an object, and then on a normal orthographic, your line of sight will be straight. Okay, that's the plan, the elevation. But this time around, your line of sight is inclined. Okay, and that gives you a true view of this object, because if you say the plan, you may not be able to describe this object the way it should be. But if you look at it just in this direction, this object looks shorter. Okay, but this time around, you're looking at it and you're having the true view of the object. So this is a similar example. And then you have this is your top view, this is your isometric view of this object, and this is your other views and then your projection lines. Let me just explain this with a very simple block. This is a very basic way to understand isometric auxiliary views. Your plan, okay, and you have your front and your plan. Okay, so you project your first auxiliary plan from your orthographic front. Remember I said that? Okay, so an auxiliary view projected from an orthographic elevation will give a first auxiliary plan. So you have this front elevation, and then if you project it from the orthographic plan, you get a first auxiliary elevation. Okay, so this is your first auxiliary plan because we have projected from our auxiliary from our orthographic elevation. That's our front elevation. All right, this is the front, this is your plan from the orthographic. So what we do is that first of all you need to draw the orthographic, and then from there you proceed to draw your first and your second auxiliary views. So now I have sketched this. Now what you need to do is that if you notice that there is on this dividing line, I have put some measurements here. I call them A and B. So by the time these angles will be specified, so by the time an angle is specified, an angle of projection, it means that I have to draw at a certain angle all of these lines, all these projections lines at this angle 45. Okay, and you can again use your polar options, polar tracking, set your angle, and then you do that. So when these lines are projected, you also now have, so what you've done is that you've created a new plane. These are original plane, but in this direction I've created a new plane that must be at 90 degrees. This plane must be at 90 degrees. Okay, now the distance from this plane should also be the distance from this plane. So that's why you see there's an A and B here. So now you've created this, so you simply take these lines, x1, y1, and then you copy the line along this length. Okay, so you should have marked out these distances A and B. Okay, A can be anything you've set for yourself, can be 1, can be 2, can be 5, and then you mark them out, okay, carefully. Now, so what we've done is that when you project from this, you measure from this. That's the way it works. If I project from the front, I measure from the plan of the orthographic. All right, so now let me explain. So if I've projected these lines and I've gotten this, so for me to be able to trace out this object, I pick the first look at this. For example, I pick this first line and I see where it coincides on the plan. Okay, look at this line, for example. Look at this point A. will sketch it here, and then I bring it here. So I see point A somewhere here, and I look at point B. Look at point B, it coincides with this also. See point B somewhere here. Look at point A, also coincides with this point. Okay, so as I bring it down here, I measure point A. So just normally, if you have your set square your compass, you mark it off, all right, but you know the distance, so these distances are going to be pretty the same. So this is point A. Now if I take this also, if I take this from here to here, I trace it down, this is be A. If I trace this B part here, this will be B. See, so but you know, because it is going to, the distance are going to be the same, so it's not a complex object, so you can sketch this all out and trace all these points. All right, now by the time you look at in this direction, you see that you have a hidden detail. All right, so if you're looking at this box, look at this box. If you're looking at this box in this direction, you know, you will not see this edge this side, so you only see from this top, but you will not see the bottom. So that's the reason why this edge is hidden, but every other portion would come up as a straight line. Okay, like this would be a straight line, this would be straight line, this would be straight line. You see, that's why this is a straight line, straight line, straight line. These are straight edges. This is 1, 2, 3. So the fourth edge is hidden, and that is why it is behind. Okay, now the same thing we do in the first auxiliary elevation. So this is our first auxiliary plan. In the first auxiliary elevation, you are going to project from the plan, and this time around you measure out from your front elevation of the orthographic. Okay, so by the time you've measured that, don't forget these lines must be at 90 degrees. So by the time you've done these projections, you must now create an XY line that is 90 degrees, that is at 90 degrees to this, that is perpendicular to this line. Okay, that you've the projection lines that are shown, like S is shown as a projection, that's the angle of projection, and to be given in the drawing, P is also shown as an angle of projection at 45. This is 30 degrees. So by the time I've drawn these projections, what I need to do is also, like we did earlier, you'd trace these points, you know, because this is the joint. So you trace point A down here, it meets here, you trace it here, you mark it out. That's why you have A. You trace it also here, you mark it out. That's why you have another A. Trace point B the same way you did for all of them. And now if you're looking at it in this direction, you see these points will be hidden because you're going to be looking at it like looking at it from the bottom. Okay, you're looking at it from the bottom, and then you're looking at it from the bottom, and then this area, okay, top here will be hidden, and so that's why it's also a hidden line here. Now in this, to do a second auxiliary elevation, you are now going to do this from your, now you're done with your orthographic. So in the second auxiliary elevation, it's a bit tricky, but I'll just explain briefly. We'll still explain this in class. What you need to do is that first auxiliary view you've drawn will become your plan. You see this, the first auxiliary view you've drawn will become your plan. Look at this. So second auxiliary plan, a second elevation can be projected from a first auxiliary plan. Can you see? A second auxiliary elevation can be projected from a first auxiliary plan. Okay, and second auxiliary plan can be projected from a first auxiliary elevation. So what you've done is that you've left this plane and we are now in this direction. Okay, and then just remember when you projected this first object, what was that? That was your first auxiliary plan. So by the time this becomes the first auxiliary plan, automatically this becomes your elevation, your first auxiliary front elevation. So it will look, and the shape is going to look in this direction. So you're no longer looking in this direction. So let your eyes be in this direction. Let your eyes look like this. Don't look this way again. You're done with the orthographic. So you're now in this direction, and so we can project in the view that has been given. So you project all the points, and then you measure off, and then you can project and you measure up the line. So you just trace it again. You trace from all the points, trace from here, trace it up, and take the distance. You see distance is 2, 4, 6 has been specified. You are no longer using 5 and 3. You have to measure it out like in this direction. Okay, the direction of the first auxiliary plan is a bit tricky. Like I've said, I will explain this again in class, and then you have this cube. Now let's just go to AutoCAD and see what it looks like in CAD. So just like I've explained, you would have drawn your elevation. So we start with the orthographic. To draw your first auxiliary elevation and plan, you start with the orthographic. When I've drawn the front and the plan, I make my projection lines. Please don't delete your projection lines. And then when you measure projection lines, you start measuring them out, okay, by comparing, looking at the distances, and then that will be interesting. So you do the same thing for the auxiliary elevation, and then you do this. Now you now go on to do the same thing for the auxiliary plan. So you see, it's very easy to actually produce once you get the details, okay, and the tricks.